we are already tracking some errors. And by default, we're even already tracking some events in some way. There are some analytics already happening inside of App Center. We already see some information about how our users are behaving or using our application. But there are, of course, so many more things that we may want to track. For example, we may want to track how many times a user clicks the login button, or how many times they click the Add New Book button. So maybe we can compare how many times they click the Add New Book button and how many times they actually add a new book. So these may eventually tell us information about our new book page. Maybe it's a bit confusing and people are not saving books. Maybe there is something that we may want to change so our users actually use this feature. So of course, it would be up to you and your team to decide exactly what is it that you want to track in here. If you have a question about how your application is being used, or you want to analyze a certain conversion rate, or you want to analyze if a feature is being used as you want your users to use that feature, you may want to track some events here and there. So let's learn how is it that we're going to be doing that. I already have this App Center helper class, and I already have this track error method. In here, I want to add another method that is going to be the track event. This is also going to be public and also going to be static, so I don't need any instance of this class. It is also going to be void, and it's going to be track event. And for now, all I'm going to be asking for is the name of the event. So a string, event name. And from here, instead of using crashes, I'm going to be using analytics. And analytics is also within one of the packages that we added at the beginning of this section. In this case, the Microsoft.appcenter.analytics package, which of course has also its own namespace. And analytics has its track event. The track event method precisely requests a string with the name of the event. So I can simply pass event name. And you may notice how it also optionally can receive some properties, just like the track error method. It works very similarly. The only difference is that errors are tracked through exceptions, events are tracked by their names. That is the only difference in here. Now, right now, I am not going to be passing any properties just yet. I want to show you how is it that App Center is going to display these events, not yet with any property. But already from here, I want to change the application a little bit. It should no longer crash in any scenario, at least because I coded a crash. Maybe there is a bug somewhere in here and the application crashes sometimes, but not because I made it crash myself. Now, the first things that I want to track in here are the click of the login button from the main page and the click of the Add New Book button here in the main page as well. So all I would have to do is, before navigating over to the login page or the new book page, is from the App Center helper, call the track event, and I can assign some name to this event. Now remember that in this case, events are tracked by their names. So if I change something about the name, it will be identified as a different event. So the string that I'm passing in here, you may want to save it as a constant in a different file, or save it somewhere else so you don't make any mistake when reusing these strings. To simplify things, I am just going to be passing here a string that is going to be login intent. So this is not yet a login, we are just going to be navigating over to the login page. So I'm going to be calling this event login intent. And I am also going to be tracking the event when the Add New Book button is clicked. So it's going to be something very similar. App Center helper, I'm going to be using the track event, and the name is going to be Add Book Intent. Something like this. And these events are already going to be tracked. We're going to see information that we didn't have before. Now we're going to know if the users are actually clicking these buttons. And once they have clicked them, they are first navigated to the login page from one of those buttons. I want to change things in here. I no longer want my application to crash. What I want to do is simply navigate back to the main page as soon as the user logs in. So I am just going to set a to-do in here that I'm not really going to be implementing. We're not really going to be logging people in by creating some database of some sorts. I'm just going to set this as a to-do for adding login. But let's say that the login is always successful and we navigate back to the main page. This is what I want to track. If everything was successful when logging in, I want to track the event that the user has successfully logged in. So, from App Center Helper again, I am going to track the event, and this time is going to be called logged in. I am still going to be reporting any error that may happen as we log in, but in this case I don't think any error will be thrown. I'm just leaving this code in here for a scenario where you want to actually add some login functionality in here, which may include some risky code that may eventually result in some exception being thrown. So you would always track that as an error without your application crashing. And finally, I want to track when a book is actually being saved. So I am no longer going to be generating this test crash. Instead, I am going to be returning true all the time, and I am going to be using the App Center Helper to track this event. That is going to be book saved. And so we are now already going to be tracking 4 types of events. One, when the user intends to log in or navigates over to the login page. One, when they navigate over to the new book page. But so far, these are just intents. They haven't really logged in and they haven't really saved any books. So that's why I have another couple of events. One event when they actually log in that is also already being tracked, and another when the book is actually saved. All of these so far being tracked without any property. So far my track event only receives the string, no properties just yet. So bear with me here, but let's go ahead and test this out. And this time I'm going to be using iOS right here already. So we at first will see all of these events on the iOS application of App Center, not yet on the Android one, although of course, if you run this on Android, no changes in the code are necessary, of course. So let's navigate first to login. And here a first event should have been tracked, a login intent. And if we now click on the login button, a second event must have been tracked, the logged in event. And the same thing happens if I navigate to the add book page. Here I am tracking a third event, and if I save, a fourth event is being tracked. However, I can actually keep navigating without saving, and this probably tells the developers that users are navigating over to add a new book, but once here they aren't saving. Perhaps the save button is too hidden or too small. Maybe they should move it somewhere else. Or, they can come up with their own reasons. But in here I am tracking this navigation, this add book intent many times, and the add book so far has only been executed once. So this event over here, the book saved event. I think so far at least once all of the events have been tracked. So let's stop the application and navigate over to App Center to see how they have been tracked. So for that, I will have to navigate to, actually I was already there, to the iOS application and to the Analytics tab. In the Analytics tab, I am going to see the Events section as well. And it may again take a few minutes for App Center to receive all the information and have it ready to be displayed, but after a few minutes I should be able to reload this page and indeed see all of the events that have already been tracked. And you can see how these 3 events have been tracked once, and this button for add book intent that I navigated over to the new book page several times, it has been tracked 6 times. But we already see that the events are being ordered through their names. So while on the crashes side and on the errors side, everything was tracked through the exception that was being thrown, and where it was being thrown. In this case, we see everything through the names. So for example, if I click on the add book intent, this is the one that has been tracked a few times already, 6 in this case. And we see something very similar, such as the amount of users that have experienced this, the amount of times this has happened, and how many times this has happened to our users. So far, we see no more information because we haven't added properties to our method, so no more properties are being tracked, but you see how each of these events have exactly the same information. With this information, you may start to realize that in this case, people are navigating to add new books, but they aren't really saving those new books. But there is one more small perk to adding these events as they are right now. If we navigate back to the overview, you will now see information about the session duration. Because events are being tracked, App Center can actually now extract information about this. You can see how some of the sessions have an unknown duration, probably the ones that weren't tracking any events. But there are now a couple of sessions that do contain some information about the duration. So far, the average is 18 seconds, so you can start to understand a little bit more about how your app is being used, how addictive it may be, or how useful your users may be finding it by taking a look at these type of charts. Now, like I mentioned so far, our events are not tracking too much information, just the default one that an event actually happened, how many times has it happened, the users, and so on. So in the next lecture, we're going to be adding properties as well. Just as we did when we were tracking the errors, we are going to be allowing the track event method to receive a dictionary of strings, which is eventually going to be passed over to the track event method from the analytics class. And we will see how that is also going to be displayed in App Center very similarly to how it was displayed in the case of errors.